Welcome to the show. Today, I am joined by a very special guest. He is the founder of three companies. He has exited two companies. He's written multiple books. He is a host of the podcast Want Money, Got Money, which helps founders find how to actually get capital for their company. And he is the co founder and CEO of Productdonecom. Sam Kamani, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for having me on the show. It's a pleasure to be on your show.
Well, it is a pleasure to have you here, Sam. And I want to start here because as we were chatting a little bit before the episode here, there's a lot of different ways our episode could go here. But I want to start with your first exit. What was it like when you got that first exit from that first company and that first check? What was that feeling like for you?
Of course, the feeling at the end was good, but it is a bit like um, labor of love kind of a thing. Um, a lot of the times, for most business owners, an exit doesn't just happen overnight. It takes a lot of time. For us, it took over a year.
Mm,
So first we had to do all the paperwork and do things like information memorandum and all sorts of things. We had to get all of our, like, we had to go through all of our accounting for the last 7 years and get everything sorted out. Then we had to reach out to multiple companies and see who would be interested in acquiring our sort of all our assets and everything. And then then they start their process, and then they have so many questions and they want to come and work in our company and meet all the employees, and that takes anywhere over 3 months, and then the deal might not even go through. So the first two deals didn't go through, and that sort of delayed it by 7-8 months, and then the third deal did go through, and even that everything takes so much longer that the whole process took a year. And that 1 year was like a roller coaster. One day you are thinking that, oh yes, I've got it, I've got the money in the bank, and then no, next day they have more questions and they're not happy about something, and then they have a big team, and then someone in the team, there's internal politics and all sorts of things happen. So you have to ride this roller coaster while you're still trying to maintain your own company, while you're still trying to fulfill all your customers needs and manage the staff and manage the team and keep the morale of the team up and all that. So it was a very painful process in my experience, going through that. But after the exit, it's good. I could take a year of sabbatical and relax a bit and just find what I want to do
Yeah,
next. So yeah, that was.
it sounds like relief, right? And I'm curious, what
Yes.
type of business was that you sold? What type of business was
That was a direct to consumer e-commerce business. So we had our own brand of all sorts of herbal supplements and natural products and all those sort of things. We sold direct to consumers in Australia, New Zealand, US, Taiwan, Singapore, Hong Kong, all that
it?
places. And yeah, so that's sort of that was the first one. But our differentiation was we didn't have any retail stores, we didn't have physical assets. Everything was digital. All our equity was in our trademarks and our branding and the huge 80,000 plus customer
Yeah.
database we had, which a lot of them were repeat purchasers of our products. So that's what pretty much we were selling.
Yeah,
So
in this day and
yeah.
age, I think that's one of the first things that any business should be really focused on is trying to build up your database. And when I was first starting my various projects, I didn't really understand that. I was kind of like putting a stake in rented land, right? Like trying to build up your Facebook followers, your
Yes,
Instagram followers. But data is the king right now, right? You're big into tech. Like
absolutely.
data
Yes.
data is where it's at. So I want to talk a little bit about productdone.com because I think this is a really interesting
Yes.
company, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but what you do is you help people and brands develop websites and apps for the smartphone, correct?
Absolutely. So entrepreneurs, founders come to us with ideas, and we help those ideas, develop into something that people can use. People um, can try it out, test it out. So we specialize in building minimum viable products or MVPs.
Okay.
So that's pretty much what we do.
So are you able to, as soon as someone comes to you and I with an idea, are you able to be like, that's a winner or that's a loser right off the bat? Or do you have to go into large amount of market research and so on and so forth? Or do you have an idea of, okay, there's something here?
Yes. So it's not the ideas. I mean, say if I was investing my own money, first of all, people who come to us, they have already decided what they want to build. In most cases, they are already married to their idea, which is never a good start, because you want to fulfill a need, you want to solve a problem for someone, and a lot of the time we all start with assumptions, so we have to be flexible enough to adapt to the consumer's needs. However, I mean, that's not a lot of founders how they think.
Right.
They want to build what they want to build. However, if it was my money and if I was investing it, I would invest in the right people rather than the right idea, because ideas can change and ideas are easy. Implementation is where it's at. It's not like, iPhone was the first phone ever, or even not even first smartphone. I mean, we used to use Blackberries, and even the touch screen Windows phone. I don't know if you even remember, I used to have one of those. But it's the implementation. Ideas are cheap, anyone can say, oh, I've got an idea to build a house, but really going and building one on your own, that is a completely different story.
Yeah,
So yeah.
I actually heard Gary Vaynerchuk talking about this earlier today on one of, obviously he produced a lot of content. He was talking
Yes.
about, it's all about the execution. That's the difference between
Yes.
Facebook and MySpace, right? It's all in the
Yes.
execution. So, being that you've been in this space, and I want to talk about your podcast in a few minutes here as well, Sam.
No
What do you
problem.
think
Yep.
is that key denominator, that common denominator when it comes to great entrepreneurs, founders? Because it can be really hard because you have to be all in on your idea and your project, but you also have to be able to pivot at the same time. So, what do you see as being the core competency of great founders?
So there are this is a sort of a two-part answer. In fact, I've been reading a lot about it, and I've been researching, and every week I meet 3 to 4 new founders. Every single week I talk with them, I understand their idea, and I have seen over the last 15 years, I've seen which ones do go to succeed and which ones don't. So what I did was, earlier this year, I collected all these thoughts, and while everyone was in lockdown, I wrote this book called Business in the Time of Corona, and it's all focused on how to pivot. So it's
Mm.
people can find out about it on howtopivot.co. And that book talks and deals on, that there is like a lot of the things that we use today didn't start like that. Just like the YouTube we know of today, it started as a dating platform. No one would even think of that. Instagram was a platform to organize your parties and send out invites and all that sort of a thing. However, it looks completely different today. Same with Pinterest, and pretty much nearly every company has to go through pivots. One thing they did was they were listening to their user base. For example, all these stories I've included in my book. Like in the YouTube's example, no one was using YouTube as a dating platform. You know what they thought? How they got started was, they thought that, oh, people look at pictures on dating websites. What if we had videos, and instead of a picture, people will record their videos, and that would give so much of a better experience for the user. And no one used it. At one point they were paying, YouTube was paying, or this is the old YouTube, and that's why it's called YouTube.
Yeah.
And they were paying girls. So they thought that, okay, if we get the girls, the guys will come. So they were paying girls $10 to make and upload a video of themselves, and still no one was doing it. However, one of the co-founder made a very dorky video of himself in like mid 2000s, like 2005 or something, or at a zoo. Just, hey, this is the elephant. It's a really low quality video, and it blew up. Kind of, it got millions of views, and they thought, oh, wait a minute, there's something in this. we'll just open it up. And if you look at all the early videos, they were all like home videos,
Mhm.
and they were just like people tripping and cats and all that sort of thing. And that's what YouTube was known for, cat videos and stuff, and just like, home videos, really low quality and all that. And they listened to their audience. They saw, okay, that this is what they want, so this is what we are going to provide them. But once they were on it, they were persistent. And it is the same thing with the Instagram. They saw that they had this massive tool to organize parties and had like hundreds of features. The only feature that people were using was posting pictures, so
Mm.
they removed everything else and just kept that. And but once they got onto it, they stuck to it. And the second quality is persistence. So like 9 out of 10 times, as an entrepreneur or a founder or a business owner, you need persistence, especially once you have the confirmation from your customer that you are on the right track. Just persist. Then that's all you need. You don't need to worry about pivots, because pivot can be a massive distraction and focus.
Yeah, I love that a lot. And for me, I think that's one of the most difficult things to be right on, because you want to be persistent. You don't want to give up. You don't want to listen to the haters out there, but you need to be
Yes.
listening to your fans at the same time. So knowing when it's time to pivot and when it's time to double down, I could not agree with you more there, Sam. To me, I think that is probably the most combined, the most important aspect of a great entrepreneur, great startup. So I really like that. I really like that a lot. I want to talk a little bit, because again, you've done so much, but I want to talk a little bit about the podcasting, right? Because you founded 3 businesses, you've exited 2, you've written 2 books, you've got it, you're CEO of a company right now. What made you decide to start a podcast? Why start the Want Money, Got Money podcast? What was the motivation?
um there were two things. The first of all, when I meet a lot of founders, and there are so many people out there who have good ideas, and I know they can have good implementation, but they don't have the resources. They lack that bridging step. They don't know where to raise capital, because capital is a bit like, it's, you to raise money you need money, kind of thing. A bank will give you money if you already have money.
That's the
It is
first
a
thing
very, very
they
strange.
it's the first thing they ask on Shark Tank is, do you have any sales, right? Yeah, where's the money coming
Yes.
from? Yeah, I like that. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So is the same thing. It's like, the best time to get a job is when you already have a job. So if you don't have a job, if you are unemployed, uh, no one wants to hire you. So unfortunately, it is a bit like that. And so there is a lot of mystery around funding. So I thought that, okay, why not I interview founders who have already managed to raise funding and build something out of nothing. So that is my sort of key motivation, to demystify that for other founders out there, and also interview on the other side, interview the investors on what is it that you saw on a certain founder that you didn't see in others. So ask them, what makes you invest in a certain startup. And just get the insights from both the sides, both the parties. So that was one of my motivation. And then the second motivation was that I am an extrovert. I like meeting people, I like talking with people. I used to go to events and speak as a speaker at sort of tech startup type events. However, when this whole corona thing happened, COVID-19 thing happened, I could no longer do that. So I wrote my book, and I thought, okay, how am I going to promote my book? So then I started connecting with people online on LinkedIn. And over time, I started getting invited to more and more podcasts. So I thought, okay, this is great. I should do this more often. Started enjoying it so much, being a guest on other people's podcasts. And they all used to say that, hey, why don't you start your own podcast? And I thought, okay, that's not a bad idea, actually. So that's exactly what I did.
Yeah, I mean, I think especially if you're comfortable with public speaking, you have experience and you have a good idea, because I do think the idea of learning how to raise money is important. And I also feel sometimes, Sam, I'd like to get your opinion on this.
Yeah.
Sometimes people
Sure,
put
sure.
so much emphasis on raising money, like, okay, I'll start my business but only after I have $100,000 in the bank. Do you think that sometimes people get too caught up in getting that capital before they start?
Yeah, that it does happen. Um, However, if you look at the number of businesses that fail because of cash flow issues, it's closer to like 80-82%.
Mm.
If you manage a small business, ask any small business, small to medium business owner, how is cash flow management going? And then they will need a couple of minutes to, shed a tear or two, because that is a very, very hard part of any business. To just manage cash flow, the only thing I would say is that the only thing a founder needs to worry about, or a good founder or a good business owner needs to worry about, is solving problems for their customers. As long as they do that, money is not going to be an issue. Solve problems for your clients and
But
customers.
one of the challenges I think that founders run into is they're dreamers. They're going to break down barriers. They're thinking, they're innovating, but they typically
Yes.
kind of lack the skill that's necessary to manage the QuickBooks and the cash flow and the balance
Yes.
sheet, and they just don't have that kind of mindset. Do you think that it's important that you team up, or maybe perhaps find a co-founder to work with that can make up for your strengths, or do you think that that's maybe not as important? What do you think about that, Sam?
Yeah, I have quite strong thoughts about this. So for me, I have a rule that I generally don't go in a business on my own. I will always have a co-founder. Even all my future projects, I will have a co-founder, because it is amazing when you have someone to bounce ideas with
Yeah.
and someone to share, and especially someone with complementary skills, because you cannot master everything. So that helps massively. And one of the most successful accelerator or an incubator in the world is Y Combinator. And if you look at Y Combinator stats, it's like they've had 5,000 plus startups that have graduated from them. They have one of the highest um, sort of result when it comes to successful exits and successful building successful companies from them. And they take companies from all around the world, and they release their stats on what is the makeup of these startups. And if you look at them, it's like around 95 or 96% of them have a co-founder.
Wow.
Only like 4-5% of them are solo founders.
Wow.
So if you want to go far, build a team around yourself that has the complementary skills. So you just anyone, I realize and I acknowledge that I don't have all the skills, and I need the right people around me to help me do those things.
So do you think that that's the most important thing to look for in a co-founder or a co-captain, is someone that makes up for your deficiencies or somewhere where you're maybe not as strong? Do you think that that's the most important thing, or what do you look for, Sam, when you're
No,
trying
that
to
is
find
not the
someone?
most important thing. In fact, the most important thing is, um, it is the same vision. You need to look for the same vision, because you want a person in your team who also wants to move in that
Mhm.
direction. For example, you are building a, I don't know, like a SaaS product, software as a service product, and your goal is uh, to have a product that fulfills X, Y, and Z, and you want it to be in this direction. And your co-founder has an idea to build a not-for-profit organization. Uh, it- you both have a different vision. You both will be moving in different directions. So you have to make sure that the vision and the long term vision is the same. How you reach it, what tactics you apply, it all that can be negotiated. All that is secondary. The key thing is the same vision. Complementary skills, it is bonus if you have complementary skills. If you don't have complementary skills, you can always hire. But yeah, the key thing is same mission,
Vision.
same vision.
Well, as we were talking about earlier too, sometimes you have to pivot, right? So, what if, and I'm
Yes.
just curious, in your position, Sam, have you ever had a business that you're working on and you have this vision, and all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, based on the data, based on the feedback, I think we need to shift, and our vision should change direction this way. Has that ever happened? And has that caused any divide or division with any of your fellow co-founders?
Um, so the thing with the vision is like I'll talk first about like really good founders, that they have a strong set of belief and they have a strong vision, and often the pivots are pivots to get people to reach to that vision. So
Gotcha.
have the same have good goals, and how you reach that goals, all that can be negotiated. So have the pivots. So in the case of YouTube, they wanted to build a video platform. Whether they do it with dating or cat videos, that's irrelevant. In case of Instagram, they wanted to do something with parties and events, and now pretty much any party around the world, it will be they will be people will be posting pictures on Instagram. So they had like the vision is the same. You can pivot how you get to that sort of thing.
I think that's really interesting, Sam, because we talked earlier in the show about managing your flexibility and your pivot, and being persistent is probably
Yes,
key features. So if you're persistent in reaching your vision, you can still pivot to your method of getting
pivot
there.
to
Yeah.
absolutely.
I like that a lot. I think that makes a lot of sense, and frankly, that helps me gives me a little bit of perspective, because that is something I struggle with a little bit. I want to talk a little bit more. So again, you've got your show, your podcast, Want Money, Got Money, and I'm wondering, how often does crowdfunding come into play on your show? How important? What role do you think crowdfunding plays when raising capital for a project?
Once again, it comes down to you need money to raise money sometimes, and that is more so in crowdfunding. So if you look at some of very successful, you can go to Kickstarter and look at some of the most successful crowdfunding campaigns, and they would have a team of people managing that crowdfunding campaign. And it would even be like 7 8 people working on it full time, um, managing that. So they would have an extremely polished video that would even cost sometimes in the north of $50,000 to just to make that sort of a video. And they would have some form of a prototype that they would have traveled around the world to source the parts and things, say if it's a physical product. So um, so yeah, it's once again, it takes money to raise money. I think if you're a sort of a tech founder, maybe just step into an accelerator incubator or the angel investor ecosystem. Every city in North America has angel investor ecosystem,
Yeah.
or accelerators or incubators. Just tap into those. There are so many different, take part in hackathons, because that will teach you. And sometimes they have prices and things. So just the other day, I interviewed a tech founder from Memphis, Tennessee, and that's how he got started. He in 2017 he took part in a hackathon. He won $500. That gave him a confidence boost. Then he took part in another that where he won 5,000, and then he went, from there, like bigger and bigger. He took part in all sorts of university run competitions and all sorts, and built a team around. And then just out of nowhere, he raised 100,000, and then now he's doing a raise of $1 million. So you have to build up to it. If you are completely fresh, you're just starting out, and all these things give you the experience. They give you the experience to pitch your idea, to pitch your vision to people, and then you keep getting better and better over time. So that's just sort of my view, or what I have come across. At the moment, we are helping a tech entrepreneur build like a prototype, which she will use to run a Kickstarter campaign in this part of the world, in Australia, New Zealand. So, so yes, it can be done. But then once again, she is spending considerable resources in managing and running that. Talking to a VC here, like a very prominent VC here, he said that it's, even if you want to raise money from a typical venture capital, it is over 6 months of full-time 40-hour a week job,
Yeah.
just raising capital. Just like for me, selling a business was a 1 year full-time job. uh, so Yeah.
That's interesting, and you really got to go out there and grind, and I think talk to the right people. I mean, we have
Yes.
Google, so and you said that's called a hackathon, is what you said, a hackathon.
Yes.
So you, how would you recommend finding a hackathon? Just going to Google, typing in hackathon local, trying to get into a
Yes, there
competition.
are there are look for startup weekend. Go to some startup weekend because that's another good place when you work in a project, when you work in a team. It's only like a weekend. Most hackathons are just a weekend, and that is a good place to meet like-minded people who where you might find your co-founder
Yeah.
to build something together. So I mean, that's a good place to build your skills. I'm not saying that you definitely end up with a product and a project and a funded company out of there, but it's a start. It's somewhere to start with for someone looking for a new direction, someone who wants to move into a sort of a tech startup world.
Yeah, I mean, I like that a lot. I mean, the reality is just get comfortable with discomfort, keep trying new things.
Yes.
You never know what a day is going to bring. And that's, I think, part of what's so exciting about creating a new business, new project, raising capital, and so on and so forth. Sam, before I let you go here, I gotta ask, you've been in the business a long time, the e-commerce, authorship, now you're in podcasting on the What Want Money Got Money show. What do you see as the next big thing in tech? What's like the next innovation that you're really interested in, you're really excited in? What are you kind of keeping your eye on?
So I am keeping my eye on GPT-3, which is the world's sort of largest or one of the largest AI um, algorithm initiative where it can do whatever you ask it to do. So for example, it is still early days. It's still probably few years away by the time its potential is completely realized. um, Say for example, it is um, like Google but many times more powerful. For example, you could ask it that build me an for example, build me an app that does this, or build me a landing page with XYZ. You just describe it in human language and it does the job for you. So not only bring you the result, it's doing the job. And that is one stage further than Google.
So it like
So
writes all the
you could
code for us? I mean, that just seems like everyone
everything.
would be a Mark Zuckerberg after that happens, right?
Um, not necessarily, because writing the code is not the hard part. There is a lot that goes into any successful startup.
Yeah.
You still have to fulfill your customers' needs and solve customers' problem. You can easily get someone somewhere in a developing country to write the code for you, but you could have the best product in the world. If no one knows about it, you still have to market it. No one is going to use it, so you still have to market it, advertise it, build a brand around it, and most important, solve a problem. So many products they say, but they don't solve anyone's problem, and they just don't get used. So many apps people download and they never use, and they die
Yeah.
because of that. So that is still a lot more complex. However, it would make it a lot easier to test your ideas.
Yeah. So I think
But
that
it that yes, that has implications not only in programming or designing, but it could be in anything from sports to anything. You could ask it a complex question. I don't know. Do you follow NBA or do you follow any sports?
sure, sure.
So it's like you could ask, like something really complex that no one has calculated, like what is how many triple doubles do you think, per your calculations, LeBron will have compared to Carmelo Anthony in the next 8 games? Something complex that no one has ever thought, and it would just based on the past performance and how the season's going, how many injuries there have been, everything it will compile, and it would give you an answer. So it would be a world changing thing
It's kind of like
if it can be developed.
the next level of machine learning and AI, it sounds like
It
is
is.
what you're
It is. It is all about machine learning. So it is learning everything from the data it's processing all the time. So I do think it would be a massive cultural shift.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's the type of thing that scares the crap out of people in some places. But I think the reality is like this stuff is coming, learn it,
Yes.
execute it. And this is, I think, above all, this is the most important time in human history to be learning and trying new things, because it's just things are unraveling very quickly, as we've seen with the coronavirus. Sam, before we get to
Absolutely.
a couple rapid fire questions here, I just want to remind everyone you can find out more about Sam at projectdone.com, where he's going to
Productdone.com. Yep.
yep, productdone.com. You can listen to
Yes.
his podcast, Want Money, Got Money. I'll have some links below. You can also check out his Amazon bestsellers and books, The 30-Day Startup and his brand new Business in the Time of Corona. So some really impressive stuff, Sam. So Sam, a couple questions for you before I let you go here. What is a must-have item that every business owner should have that costs less than $50?
Less than $50. Uh, I think a completely random thing, like a Pomodoro timer, which is like a 20-minute timer. You set it, and then you have could be 20 minutes, 40 minutes, whatever, that you won't look at social media, you won't do, you would just focus on that one task that you are doing till that timer goes off. Whether you're writing a blog article, or you're recording a video, or editing a video, or editing whatever you are doing, you would just, or doing the accounts, you would just focus on that task.
That's a big one, because I got to be honest, this is like, you get itchy fingers. Like, did someone watch my
Yes.
TikTok? Who's watching my TikTok? You know, that's that can be a difficult thing. Sam, what's your
Yes.
favorite subscription right now?
Favorite subscription? I am okay. This is a podcast subscription. Actually, it is Akimbo by Seth Godin.
Ah,
So I'm quite enjoying that. But I have lots of subscriptions, and I would have to check which one. I use Figma a lot. Figma is a designing tool. I quite like that. So I make all my covers for my podcast and that. But I use it for all sorts of designing things, just for fun. Not for my clients. For my clients, my team does it, who's like, who are specialized in design and stuff, and UX UI design. But just for myself. Yeah.
that's fair enough. And you're actually the second person this week that's recommended Seth Godin's Akimbo. So that is definitely going to be a must listen to for me. Definitely check that out. Okay, final question here for you, Sam. If you had a billboard that could reach millions and millions of people, what would you put on your billboard?
It might sound I don't know, cheesy, but yeah. Anyway, prioritize action over motion. So it is from Atomic Habits, James Clear's book. Be mindful of action, and what is motion versus action. So
Good deal. Well, Sam Kamani, thanks for joining the show and dropping your words of wisdom, brother. I appreciate you.
thank you so much for having me on the show. It was amazing talking with you. Thanks, Mark.
My pleasure.